So today the Survivor Circle for Reproductive Justice is having their national launch. We are going live as a national organization that is going to serve the needs and provide healing supports for survivors of forced, coerced, and imposed sterilization across Canada.
And with that and with the anticipated passage of the bill, what will it mean to you personally?
So this is in follow-up to the truth and reconciliation work, all of the commitments that have been made, the work that has been occurring, but also what we continue to see every day around racism in the healthcare system. It's important for survivors to know that they have somewhere to go, that there is this support in place, and that this bill is going to prevent this from ever happening again against any young girl, young woman, young man from the Indigenous community, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit across Canada. And this is one step further toward ensuring that safety and that body autonomy for Indigenous young people is there.
And as far as reconciliation, how important is this in terms of reconciliation?
In terms of reconciliation, and again going back to the systemic discrimination that is experienced by Indigenous people across the country every day, this is a big step toward addressing those inequity. Sorry, I got to start that again. So say the question again.
How important is this in terms of reconciliation?
In terms of reconciliation, this is part of the work that needs to happen around systemic discrimination that is occurring every day in every pocket, every part, every city across Canada. Not only do we see forced sterilization happening within the healthcare system, but it's imposed through other systems in which we operate every day, including the child welfare system, the residential school legacy. It's occurred within the correction system. Many different levels have had an impact on Indigenous women and men in this way, and this is going to be one way via the bill S250 that will prevent that from continuing to occur. So,
and what's your message to some Canadians that may be surprised to hear that this is still, in some cases, still happening?
It's a shock. It really is a shock. There are so many Canadians, so many Indigenous communities that aren't even aware that this is an issue, that this is real, that this has carried on beyond the legacy of the residential school system, that this is something that is still faced by Indigenous women and men every day, that young women, young girls, young men, that when they have encounters with the healthcare system, this is the reality of how they experience discrimination. That what we have learned from the experience of Joyce Echaquan and all of the survivors that have been out there is that it's so, what's the word?
Ingrained?
Not only is it ingrained, but it's so covert. Like it is just natural. And so that's something that is unacceptable. It can no longer be tolerated, and that's why we need to find survivors, reach survivors, and raise the voice of survivors so that they then can share their story, that they then can become the teachers that are going to support and provide more safeties for young people to prevent this from happening again.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add that I haven't asked that we should cover?
I would just add that we are looking to connect with women and men, Indigenous communities out there that may have a survivor in their family. It could be their sister, it could be their daughter, it could be their auntie, it could be a cousin, or men even that have also experienced it. A lot of the time we don't know that this was a crime, that this was illegal, that something wrong happened. And so this is now the time for us to do that education, to show people this is what forced sterilization is. This is what Bill S250 is, and this is what valid consent means. You are in control of your body, and nobody else can make that decision for you. And so that's the message we really need to communicate, and those are the survivors that we need to connect with.
Thank you very much. And can I get just one thing?
So I'm Harmony Redsky, and I'm the Executive Director of the Survivor Circle for Reproductive Justice.
Thank you very much, Harmony.
Thanks.
So explain why you're here today.
So today we're here because the Survivor Circle for Reproductive Justice will be launching our national registry. And essentially we're a nonprofit corporation that are pulling together all of the survivors of forced, coerced sterilization, which is something that's still happening. This is not a thing that's happening in the past. This is Indigenous women and men, in some cases, going through forced or coerced sterilization. And so the National Registry will provide an opportunity for people across Canada, Indigenous people across Canada that have experienced this harm, to register with the Circle, and then we'll be able to provide them some healing resources. We'll be able to do some data collection with some really good data sovereignty so that it's hosted with our organization, an Indigenous organization, and it will allow us to know the numbers better.
And so with the passage of this bill, explain how it will make a difference.
Well, I should have started with the bill. But the bill that has passed through Senate, the Survivor Circle for Reproductive Justice, is hopeful that it will also make it through the House. It's important because if you think about it, we're 2024, and this is an issue that's still occurring. It's a criminal act. In other countries, it's seen as a crime against humanity to forcefully or coercively sterilize any human being to the point where they can't reproduce. And so in Canada in 2024, it's important that the law recognizes the actual harm this causes an individual. But it's not just about the individual, right? It's also about the family and the community. And when you look at a place like Canada, where we've experienced so much colonial legacy as a result of things like Indian residential school or the child welfare system, it's really important to recognize the severity of the crime that's occurring. And so if you have that in law, where there's an actual, there's a law in place that has a consequence for an individual that doesn't see an Indigenous person as an important enough person not to sterilize forcefully or in a coerced way, it's problematic. So the law just kind of codifies what we all morally believe should be happening, right? And in this case, it can't be in 2024 that we're okay with Indigenous women, girls, aunties, mothers, men, two-spirited or transgender people being forcefully sterilized.
And for you personally, what would it mean?
Well, for me personally, I'm an advocate because I see our community starting to thrive and grow. I am not a survivor myself. I am a board member, but I'm doing this work because this does impact all of our communities, right? And I mean, I've done a lot of work with the missing and murdered. You can't disconnect these issues, right? When you talk about missing and murdered Indigenous women or the violence against them, this is ultimate violence. When you remove someone's opportunity to give life, I don't know how you can be more violent. And if I can't stand up and speak out for that or against that, then I'm not doing my job as a good legal advocate for my community or my people.
And how important is this bill and this State Circle for reconciliation?
I think it's really important for reconciliation for a couple of reasons. I think, first of all, we're still collecting information, right? And you see that whether it's the unmarked burial graves or, in this case, sterilization, forced sterilization and coerced sterilization, we're still trying to collect data. We're still trying to actually understand the impact and data of numbers, but we know it's happening. Like, we've always known these things are happening. And so if this gives voice to and makes change so that no other Indigenous person is forcefully or coerced into sterilization, then we're doing our job.
And what would your message to Canadians who about this issue that maybe it's the first time that they feel that this is actually still happening?
And that's actually often a lot of people's response, like, what do you mean it's still happening? And so recognize it's not just a past problem or issue, that it is actually impacting Indigenous community now, and also to understand that you need to know, you need to understand this history. Part of what we also will be doing is education around the issues, because there's even Indigenous people in communities that aren't aware or don't understand what's happened to them. But we estimate that, we don't know the exact numbers, but the estimation's between 12,000 and 15,000 Indigenous survivors still living. So it's a big issue, and it's something any Canadian that's interested in learning more about Indigenous people, culture, and moving towards reconciliation has to take into account.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add that I haven't asked that you think should be covered?
No, I think just in one addition to the last question, it's like any individual who has ever had children of their own, I just put yourself in that spot for one moment. Even if you've had a child, all of a sudden you can't because you were either coerced or forced into the inability to ever procreate again. And what if your future is no longer your autonomy or your plan? How would that make you feel? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.